No one warns you about this. Not the first time they disrespect you. Not the second, not even the third. But one day you notice something unsettling. You're more guarded, less patient, quicker to withdraw, slower to trust. And you think, what's wrong with me? Nothing. This is what repeated disrespect does to a human nervous system. It doesn't just hurt your feelings, it reshapes how you relate to the world. This video isn't about blaming others, and it's not about becoming bitter. It's about understanding how constant disrespect quietly changes your personality and how to stop losing yourself in the process. Disrespect doesn't always look dramatic. When people hear the word disrespect, they imagine shouting insults or obvious cruelty, but most personality changes don't come from loud moments. They come from small, repeated signals like being interrupted consistently, your boundaries being brushed off, jokes at your expense that are framed as harmless, being taken for granted because you're reliable, your feelings being minimized or rationalized away. Each moment feels minor on its own, so you let it slide. You tell yourself, well, it's not worth reacting. I'm being too sensitive. They didn't mean it, but your nervous system is keeping score. The brain treats repeated disrespect as a threat. Here's the psychology most people don't realize. Your brain doesn't measure harm by intensity alone. It measures frequency. Repeated disrespect sends a quiet message. You are not safe to relax here. So your nervous system adapts, not consciously, automatically. This is not weakness, it's survival. Over time, your brain begins to adjust. How much openness, warmth, and vulnerability it allows. That's when personality changes begin. The first change, you become hyper-aware. One of the earliest shifts is hyper-awareness. You start scanning conversations, reading between the lines, watching tone, timing, and micro-reactions. Not because you're dramatic, but because you've learned that disrespect often arrives quietly, so your mind stays alert. This can look like overthinking texts, replaying conversations, feeling tense even during normal interactions. People may say, "You're different lately." What they don't see is that your nervous system no longer feels neutral. The second change, emotional withdrawal. At first you try to communicate. You explain how things make you feel. You give chances. You hope awareness will fix it. But when disrespect continues, something else happens. You stop explaining. Not because you don't care, but because caring feels unsafe. So you pull back emotionally. You share less, react less, feel less. From the outside, it can look like coldness. Inside, it's exhaustion. This is where many people confuse self-protection with losing themselves. The third change, your patience erodes. Here's something important. Repeated disrespect doesn't just affect how you feel about others. It affects how you feel about yourself. Each time you tolerate something that hurts you, a quiet internal conflict forms. Part of you says, "This isn't okay." Another part says, "Just endure it." That internal tension drains patience over time. So you may find yourself irritated by small things, less tolerant of mistakes, snapping at people who don't deserve it. This isn't your true nature. It's unresolved self-betrayal, surfacing sideways. The fourth change, trust becomes conditional. Trust used to be natural. Now it feels risky. Repeated disrespect teaches your brain a lesson. Closeness leads to being diminished. So trust becomes conditional. You keep emotional distance. You test people. You wait for disappointment before fully opening. This doesn't make you cynical. It makes you cautious. But over time, that caution can harden, especially if disrespect comes from people you once felt safe with. Why kind people change the most? Here's a painful truth. The people who change the most under repeated disrespect are often the kindest ones. Why? Because they give the benefit of the doubt, absorb discomfort to keep peace, normalize being misunderstood, stay longer than they should. They don't leave at the first sign of disrespect. They adapt, and adaptation, when prolonged, rewires personality traits. Empathy turns into emotional labor. Patience turns into suppression. Flexibility turns into self-erasure. This is not growth, it's armor. People sometimes say, "You've grown tougher." But toughness born from repeated disrespect isn't always growth. Sometimes it's armor. Armor protects you, but it also limits movement. You laugh less freely. You trust selectively. You're always slightly guarded. This is not who you are at your core. It's who you had to become to survive certain environments. The long-term cost of staying in disrespectful dynamics doesn't just affect mood. It affects identity. Over time, people report feeling disconnected from their softer side, losing enthusiasm, struggling to feel joy fully, feeling older emotionally than their age. That's not maturity. That's emotional fatigue. Your personality didn't change overnight. It adapted slowly, quietly, intelligently to protect you. Reclaiming yourself starts with naming the pattern. Healing begins with clarity. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" ask, "What did I have to endure repeatedly?" Once you name the pattern, shame loses its grip. You realize you didn't become distant for no reason. You didn't lose patience randomly. You didn't harden without cause. Your system responded exactly as designed. Respect restores personality faster than advice. Here's something hopeful. You don't fix these changes through motivation. You fix them through exposure to respect. Being around people who listen without dismissing, honor boundaries without pushback, treat your presence as valuable. In respectful environments, your original personality slowly resurfaces, not all at once, but piece by piece. A quiet reminder: if you feel different than you used to be, don't rush to judge yourself. Ask what you've been tolerating. Repeated disrespect doesn't just hurt. It teaches your nervous system lessons it never wanted to learn. The moment you choose environments that honor you, those lessons begin to unlearn themselves. You were not born guarded. You were not born detached. You were not born exhausted. You adapted. And what adapts can also heal. Sometimes the most powerful change is not becoming stronger, but returning to who you were before you had to protect yourself so much.